On today's episode, we are going to show you how to hang up your own wall cabinets. First step is to remove the existing closet-made shelf.
Alright, so before we start putting the cabinet up or doing anything else, one of the easiest things and first things you should be doing is removing the doors. It makes the cabinet easier to handle. Also, with most cabinets, they are reversible, typically, to where the top and the bottom could be either or. So this could be the bottom or the top is what I mean by that. So the doors are reversible as well. So we're going to go ahead and take these off so we can work with this cabinet a little bit easier. Perfect. And now we essentially just have a box that we can work with, which is easier when we want to screw it into place. It's also a lot lighter. So, next step, let's start working on our layout in the laundry room. Now here's a helpful hint if you're doing this on your own or if you have trouble lifting the cabinet box. A lot of times when you go install a cabinet, usually, let's say it's in a kitchen remodel and you know you're going to be doing a backsplash, you could take a piece of lumber and screw it in level to the wall where the upper cabinet will sit. Call it a ledger board. You just set the cabinet on there, you know it's level to begin with, you might have to do a shim or two, and then you can screw it in. It makes it very easy. Now, if you don't want to put holes in that wall because that wall may not be getting covered up or you don't feel like spackling, you can create a different type of support. Almost like a T-support like you would do for drywall. So if you'll notice this 2x4 we have here, it's a piece of scrap from an old job. It's very warped, so forgive it, but for what we're doing here, it's really just my second hand if I'm working alone or if I don't want to have to lift the cabinet too much. So I'm going to go ahead and make a T out of this by cutting one piece and having a longer piece so I can put it up against the wall and put my foot in front of it so it can hold it for me. So let's make a T and I'll show you what I mean. So this is a good little helping hand if you're working alone and pretty much need to position the cabinet without actually putting a ledger board into the wall. You'll lean this end against the wall, you'll support with your foot right there. Having the cabinet already close, you'll be able to put it up right there. That wall will give you stability because it will be leaning against it. And we'll show you in the demonstration when we go ahead and put our cabinet in as well. But this is a good help, just 2 screws on each end and you have your helper. Alright, so we're going to lay out our cabinet here and where to put it. Now this cabinet's going to go extraordinarily high, almost to the ceiling here, even though it's a little bit of an undersized cabinet. So it is 30 inches tall. I'm going to set the bottom of it at 32 inches. That's how I know I'm going to have a 2-inch clearance up top. You'll see all the holes from the closet-made shelf. We'll spackle this later on. So for now, pretty much what I'm going to be doing is just marking a line. I know there's 32 inches from the ceiling based upon that mark. What I'm going to do is just take a level with that mark that I'm hitting right there, and I'm going to draw a line. I'm just going to continue it to where I need to, making sure I maintain my level. Alright, that's going to be the bottom side of my cabinet. Alright, so the method I'm going to use here to install is really going to be the ledger board method because we already have spackling that we're going to have to do down here anyway. So even though I have my line where I need it to be, notice a bit of my 2x4 scrap here is not exactly straight. The straighter you have it, the easier it's going to be for you, but this is what I have on hand. However, I can still work with it. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to secure this into studs, and that's going to hold it. So the studs that are in the wall. So what I have here to start with is the stud buddy. Now there are different types of stud finders, electronic stud finders, and I've had plenty of them. This simple $10 magnetic one has still been the best that I use. Why? Because it's not going to misread anything. It's magnetically going to find the nail that is going into the stud through drywall. So as I can see, there's a stud going along here right next to this box, which makes sense. If I go, let's say 16 inches in some other direction, I should be around here somewhere in theory. Oh, there it is. 16 inches. So like I said, sometimes with finding it, depending on how strong the magnet is, just take a little bit, go in different directions, but eventually it will grab. So we go with this. Now, since I know a stud is right there, I'm going to take a plumb line using my level. And notice I'm where I need to be. So I know there is a place I can secure into if necessary. And just to see where I'm at, because I have a 36-inch box, that would still work. Let's come back here. There's my other one. I'll do it again. I have 19 inches. In theory, I should have, this was framed properly, something right there. But in homes, it's not always framed properly. In this case, we got lucky. All right. So I know if I put my ledger board, let's give an example. Let's say I just want to put it right here. I don't need to go across the whole thing. As long as I'm secured into 2 studs, it will support my cabinet, and I can level my cabinet from there. So I'm going to choose these 2 since it's going to hold the bulk of my cabinet. And all I'm going to do is make a mark here, just very quickly. Lined up. And I'm going to go ahead and put 2 screws in here and then put them in through the wall. And because I put my ledger board in where I need it to be, already from the very beginning my cabinet is level. Now there are other things to check. You have to check plumb, level, many different directions. Sometimes you need to shim out different parts of the cabinet. And based upon this, I'm going to be shimming out the bottom, which means I can put a couple screws tight at the top, shim out the bottom, and this cabinet will be done. I can put the doors back on. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so we're going to put temporary screws in here up top so we can then shim out the bottom to make sure that the front is plumb. Just so we make it simple as far as screwing into a stud, which you want to screw into a stud. You don't just want to screw into drywall, it will rip out. We know we found a stud 3¼ inches off of this wall. Now, this is relatively a new home, new construction. So the safe assumption is that this stud is not warped, or at least overly warped, that we could pull the same measurement off of this wall. So if it's 3 1/4 in, it is 7/8 past the face frame here. And it's a 3/4 reveal on the face frame. So 3/4 plus 7/8 is 1 5/8 from the inside of the box. If I may have a pencil. Well, that's fine. We can just make a quick mark actually. 1 5/8. So we're gonna put a temporary screw right in there. You want to continually check for how plumb you are in multiple directions. Alright, so we still have to shim out that bottom. That has not changed. Level is still good. And we are still plumb that way. So now, thank you. If this were hanging cabinets in a kitchen, you could just put a laser level, or you could have just drawn lines all the way up. We are putting this cabinet higher than usual for this standard size, so we're not having easy access to screw in at the top of the frame. That's why we're putting them in the back of the cabinet right here, which is perfectly acceptable. So at 19 1/8 is the next stud. So let's pull over for that. Or rather, I could just take 16 inches over from where I was. Now, you can use cabinet screws here, which I will be replacing these with cabinet screws. They have a wider head, they help hold the box there. These exterior screws are just helping me hold this temporarily. And in this case, because it is for laundry room, I may use a combination of both, just because these cabinet screws that I have here are only 1 1/4 inches, where I like them to be a little bit deeper. These are 2.5 inches for exterior. So a combination won't hurt, not to mention, no one's ever gonna see it. All right, so now let's go ahead and grab shims. We'll start shimming this out to be a proper depth here on the bottom. And we go ahead and finish securing everything, get the doors back on, and we're done. All right, so now we're going to take wood shims here. And as I said, we're going to shim out the bottom, just so we can make sure the front plane of this is perfectly plumb the way it needs to be. And obviously, as you shim, make sure you're checking how it needs to be. That's looking pretty good over here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and secure this in, because then I'm going to end up having to remove my ledger, and it's secured enough that I can shim the rest and then put it in where I need to be. So when you have the shims where you want, just take a utility knife to it, score, should snap off, nice and clean. So as far as securing the cabinet in place, as you can see underneath it here, we did our shims into studs where we cut them out. We even kind of spaced a little bit more over here. We have a screw going into studs underneath the cabinet. Just for extra security and weight, we have additional screws at the bottom of the cabinet inside, and at the top of the cabinet inside, which we definitely would still need the top as a standard. That is definitely going to hold a decent amount of weight right there. As far as how many screws you want, Usually when we're doing kitchen cabinets, you know, we'll do screws into studs at the bottom and at the top, and it's typically always enough. If you feel like you want to go more because it makes you more comfortable, go right for it. Your own choice. So let's go ahead and get these doors back on. We'll be done. Doors are back on how they need to be. You can adjust the doors depending on what type of adjustment system the hinges have on there. Some have 6-way adjustments, left to right, in and out, up and down. What you're going to go for is just try and make this reveal as even as possible, the doors as even as possible, on top and bottom and on in and out. So now that the doors are adjusted in place, the last bit we have to do is put the hardware in place. So for this, we're just doing a standard knob. We're just going to essentially line up and drill holes where we need to. Now, hole placement is purely your choice. If you want to have any kind of a standard to go by here in terms of knobs, typically when you see the design of the face frame, usually lines up somewhere in the middle. Some people want it a little higher, some people don't. It's really your choice. For what we're going to do here, kind of get an idea, the middle off the door is 1 1/4 inches. So we're going to do it for both. We're essentially going to meet on this miter where my thumb is. So let's go ahead and pull from both sides, make a mark, and we'll drill it, and we'll get these installed. Let's do it. Alright, so we have a bunch of holes in the wall here that need to get filled. Now, sadly, they're slightly bigger than I would care for to just put drywall compound on there, so I am going to do a little bit of tape as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pretty much just start with putting some drywall compound over the holes, putting tape across them, and then covering and smoothing out with my first layer of drywall compound on top of that. We're going to call that a tape coat. So just watch, here's what we do, and once it dries I can do my second coat and go from there. All I'm doing here, it's not meant to be pretty. It's not going to be a finished result. I am just taping the holes that I have. Drywall is essentially, it's paper, okay? This is paper tape. This is going to bond very well, and when I get 3 coats on this evenly and I sand it down, you'll never know it was here. Some people like to use mesh tape because these are just put on. In this instance, probably would be the way to go. I just like paper tape. But a nice finished result, paper tape all the way, in my opinion. Other people will have a different opinion, but whatever works best for you, do that.